Well, ladies and gentlemen, there will not be enough power for everybody in all the industries and everything moving forward with AI, cryptocurrency. So who's going to get cut so others can flourish and move forward? Do you think? So these charts about global power demand is going to show you why a lot of these Agenda 2030 goals are coming in, because they want to limit our usage of power because they can't generate enough or create enough more to power all these other industries that are evolving. So what's the easiest low-hanging fruit to cut first? That's what I want to show you. Then you can determine how you want to protect yourselves moving forward from this first slide. Goldman Sachs showing us off the IEA reports here. AI is that dark grayish color at the top. So the power demand, if we were to stop and not use any AI from this point forward, we would only require that light blue all the way to where we have production today. There probably wouldn't be any demands for us to cut power usage, turn off your AC, etc. But with all this overage in demand, that's just going to be insatiable and continue to grow. Something has to cut. There's not enough equipment even around through 2030, which I'll get into in a minute, to even bring this up to localized power for these localized centers, data centers, etc. Gives you a good indication of where we're moving. Here is the makeup of the supposed increases of energy that we're going to try to push through to continuously feed these data storage centers. We'll see how it goes, but here's renewables. So an entire gamut of renewables. Was it really for us to save the planet, or was it to give this whole AI power structure its own power source in and above what is already generated on the planet? You have to think about it. If this thing's 10,000 times smarter than humans, you think it could manipulate humanity into providing power for it with a different type of power, solar, wind, etc., to get that extra capacity, knowing that it had sort of reached a bottleneck on where we went with conventional sources of oil, natural gas, coal. Now we're bringing back the pebble bed nuclear reactors because of this. And it's in black and white already. They're telling you your electricity prices are going to go up. Not because other humans are using it or other industries are using it, as in heavy industry, more smelting or mining or something like this. It is because AI is going to gobble so much that there's going to be a competition between humans and now robotics AI. So you are just going to get charged more because the demand will always be met and the power bills will always be paid for the AI centers because they're raking in trillions of dollars. So it's never ending increases in power because there's not enough of it to go around right now. And we're starting to see this pinch. If you haven't seen your electricity bills go up, which I'm going to say 90+% of you have, if you're watching the video, the other 10% of you will very shortly. And from this point, it's going up indefinitely. And a lot of people think nuclear power will be too slow to power the AI boom. So the amount of new power, I highlighted in blue, 100 cities worth of new electricity just to power AI. This is the reason they want you to cut your consumption so they can redivert that right now, just as an interim gap measure here. And if you start to take a look at the lines in availability of power, generation of power, circled in big red, they're easy to see. No such thing as a low energy rich country. So the areas in Africa, specifically Northern Africa in the West there around Eritrea, Ethiopia, they have installed 6 hydroelectric power dams, the largest in Africa, by the way, at the new Renaissance Dam. But subsequently, there's step-down dams that are generating. So they call it the electrical corridor of Africa. Very simple to understand. These are going to be the most prosperous and richest nations in Africa because they have constant electricity all the way down to Tanzania. So that little quadrant up there, because it'll be fully electrified all the time, will have the highest GDP in Africa, and you start to see that. So you got to keep that as a metric. Who can produce the most power will absolutely win this AI race, period. This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. We're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world. The different types of generation. India, coal, 73%, renewables at 20%. And then we go to China, coal, 58%, renewables, 33%. We come to the US, natural gas, renewables, nuclear, coal way down at 15%. This is why we've lost our competitive edge economically. We can't produce the power cheaply anymore. It's just, and then the EU is even worse. Their number one production source is almost 50% renewables, which is not reliable. And again, all the way down 10% coal. So you can see the economies that have reduced their electrical production are reducing their economies overall as well. So there's kind of a relationship there. It's pretty easy to see. So wherever these faltering economies are in the G7 are the ones that are pushing the renewables the most. Now, to give you an idea of AI data center usage of power, okay, it's way down at data centers right now, and we're right at 2023. But by the time we roll out to 2030, and we've already into 2025, we're almost 26, right? So if you follow that arrow all the way to the top there, 2030, power centers are going to be consuming as much energy as India. More energy than Russia, more energy than Japan, more energy than Brazil, more energy than Korea, more energy than Canada and Germany. This is why we're being asked to reduce power, because they can't get us there yet. So they need other sources to push it, to keep developing it until they can actually come up with the power that's needed. So the vast amounts of it is just, well, I'll give you another number here. The IEA, again, this is the International Energy Association. Data center energy consumption set to reach almost 1,000 terawatt hours. And then remember how many hours are in a year and divide by that, and we'll see how much is needed per hour. Even off hours are still going to require an enormous amount. This is where we're getting into the conundrum. The off hours used to be the low load, but now it's the high load continuously 24/7 because of the data centers worldwide. So they're looking at this. So keep the number. We'll round it off at 1,000 just because easy math. So the power hungry AI, now I'm going to walk you through some time here. This is at the end of 2022, right at the borderline of 2023. So if you look at Microsoft, Google, and Meta, blue is Slovenia, the country. And notice their power consumption is coming down at the same time the AI center is going up. And you'll start to see the economies of the EU not doing so well. There's a direct relationship. Now notice this is only at the end of 2022. We're looking at Microsoft right around 20, 21 terawatts or so. 15 Microsoft, you're around 18 terawatts. Meta is right around 10 terawatts. So these are hours, by the way. So there's a huge difference of just a total terawatt versus terawatt hours, which I'll get into. So then we just jump forward to 2023. At the end of 2023, when they did this report, Google has now jumped to 24, Microsoft to 24 terawatt hours, then Meta to 12. So we're looking at some, substantial increases here. And putting these together, you can see Google had jumped from around 20 to 24. That's a large increase. Microsoft had gone from about 18 or so to 24. And then Meta, as you can see at the bottom, jumped from just around 10 to 12 terawatt hours. So the substantial increase, I haven't been able to find anything newer than this. So think about that. That's only in 2023. So when it goes 24, just do the math on it, 24, 25, 26, and just add the same amount that was increased from 2022 to 23 across the way. And then we start to get into gigantic numbers here, and there's just not enough power. But in some countries, there is. So the top power producing countries, China taking the lead. So they're running a bunch of hydropower up there as they're new. And then the whole thing about the Tibetan Basin and the new dams going up in Tibet, they need that because they're generating power. So anywhere you see like Japan, they're flat. Russia's coming up a little bit, but Japan's economy is not doing so well. EU, you can see it dropping off. EU economy is not doing so well. India running up, UK or the US flat. So it's all about the power race to generate power is going to win the AI race here. There's no like any other magic formula to this except who generates the most wins. And here's the electrical generation taking us through the end of 2024. Yeah, that red line again is China. So if you're looking at just total power consumption and generation to be able to power AI data centers, China wins hands down. What we're going to be at 4,000 terawatt hours and they're at 10,000. They're going to be at least doubling us plus in terms of innovation and being able to crunch that data and hold those together. But there are some constraints to it, power being one. So this came off of the NVIDIA 2025 keynote presentation showing you with the most technological state-of-the-art 576 GPU liquid cooling units that they're going to be running at 500 plus kilowatts. Okay, but roll that back to just a regular cloud storage data center, which is 5 kilowatts on the low end. So that's 100x increase in power demand just as you see this technology moving. Now, as this moves to the next generation, that's probably going to be, at least at a megawatt or something for each one. So you can start to see how this you're rolling numbers at this point, and you can forecast it out. All this information is available for you. I put a bunch of links below so you can chase those down as well. So here's something interesting also. So we just go to large language model, and it didn't do Notebook LM. It's just strictly ChatGPT and OpenAI. By the end of the decade, AI centers could consume as much as 20 to 25% of the US power requirements. Where do we get the extra power from? Everybody's wanting to turn things off. Our oil industry's in just a death spiral. It's coming back, but the damage has been done over the last 4 years, 12 years, if you want to go back that far, a lot of the regulations. So where's this all going to come from? It's sure not coming from wind. It's sure not coming from solar. The only option is bring up next generation 0-point technologies, parent-dev magnetic motors, this sort of thing, or we go over to pebble bed nuclear reactors. There's no in between. I mean, there's no way to really generate this much power. The only thing they can do now is steal the power from people. But at that point, it's going to roll over to a point where you're going to be living in a square cave because you'll have no LED, even a 25-watt LED light will be siphoned off to power these stations or power these centers. So they even talk about 60-watt light bulbs being siphoned off to pull over into the mix there, which is kind of scary when this thing is going to get such a behemoth that it is going to still, even a single watt is going to be valuable. Like a single Satoshi will be very valuable. Watts, Satoshis, it's all energy in motion. How hungry is the AI boom? Well, let's look. Data shows DeepSeek and who else is in there? ChatGPT and Claude. They are talking about the number of queries per day and the amount of energy that will be required for all of this. There's Notebook LM at the very bottom. There's the second sentence from the bottom. So if we're getting about 700 million to 1 billion queries per day, and you're taking, what's that, 0.42, we'll call it half a watt, times 1 billion, then you start to crunch the math together, and then this is just going to increase over time too. So at some point it'll be 2 billion, and then 5 billion queries a day. And they're all running at half a watt. So where's the power going to come from? I keep coming back to that. I'm going to say it 50 more times. Where's the power going to come from? And the other constraints are water. So Texas AI centers guzzle 463 million gallons. And now people, you and me, are being asked to cut back on showers because the data centers need more water. And we're using water too as humans. But now there's this competing force. We have two entities on the planet, humans, as in a Homo sapien sapien, and now AI. These are battling for the same exact resources. They need the same resources. This is the crazy thing. They need water and they need energy to survive. We need energy too. It's called food. Water, we need water too. Dehydration. So data centers and humans are very similar in their needs to stay alive, whether it's a joule or a watt, kilojoules. I don't care how you measure it, how we measure our food and break it down into energy consumption of calories. We're going to do the same thing. And I don't care if it's a watt, a kilowatt, a terawatt, a megawatt, doesn't matter. It's the same exact thing. So there's two competing races on the planet right now, Homo sapiens sapien and AI. We need the same stuff. Now, who's going to win? The media is now telling you to cut back on showers so they can run data centers. My bad. That was poor planning that you didn't get your data centers in a place that had consistent water flow. They should be called out for exactly that. So here's where we get in. The rubber's going to meet the road here super hard, and it's going to be smoking tires on this one. 2022 to 2026. Now, I showed you that one slide where they said it's going to go to 1,000 terawatts by 2030. So you can see how this is going to march forward. And suddenly we get another blue category there, the light blue. We get a dedicated AI. The darker blue is cryptocurrencies, and that's going to increase as well. The hash power, the rates, the blockchains, the Ripple net, on-demand liquidity. You got the Bitcoin blockchain as a world reserve currency inbound, and then Ethereum running all its different protocols and smart contracts and layers there that are going to be needed for all of the digitization of all assets on the planet. Is going to require a lot of power. You're going to be running blockchains that were never even thought. And you get into this real world asset class of things on smart contracts to be able to digitize properties and swap those between nations and whatever and clear that off. We need a huge amount of power. Even just that alone would stretch it. But AI wants to jump in too. And we need to live in between these entities here as humans that are going to, again, they want our same resources. So it's going to go 22, 26, 30 at 1,000 terawatts. So I was, trying to dig in to see how much total power consumption in the United States per terawatt or terawatt hours we were. And then they broke it down by state. And, it's just easier to go on a global because it's a global phenomenon, not an individual one here. So 400 terawatts, you divide 8,760 hours per year. And then if you're going to divide that, the terawatt hours is 0.04. So out of that total consumption, then you see if it rises to 800 terawatt hours, we're at 0.9. Now, once we get into that 1,000 terawatt hours, we are going to be well over 1 terawatt hour on that. So you can see how it works out into the consumption on it. But here's what I was saying, the low-hanging fruit. Now, if you can't produce the power, so total for all the entire world is 116,000 terawatt hours. So, all this additional is going to gobble up 1,000 in the beginning. But I assure you that's going to trend up. So there's going to be a crossover here somewhere. So if they can't produce an extra because we don't have the power plants built, all the new tech's not out, next gen, 0 point's not out yet, where do you get it from? Well, you're going to have to pull it from somewhere. And you're going to have to make every excuse in the book why industry, 42% of electricity is declining and we don't need industries. They're bad. We're going to cut them off. There's tariffs, there's trade wars. You got COVID last time, knocked out a bunch of businesses. And I'm really wondering, all that SME and small mom pops and, medium-sized business, they all get knocked out to take the power from them. And the excuse was something else to reduce their power consumption, to redivert that elsewhere. I kid you not. That's the direction I'm thinking these days. So industry, if we got 42% of all the usage of power around the world, if we could limit industry, destroy it, BASF in Germany, for example, can you imagine how many factories have gone down to zero across all the EU? Just forget Germany alone, but all the EU. Where does all that power going to go? Oh yeah, rediverted. And then if we look at commerce, same thing. Can't fly as much. Everything's limited. It's only consumption this, you're limited quota on that. Taxes explain some of it. Look how many factories closed in China. All of the factories closing gives China an enormous amount of power to just redivert into AI, data processing centers. Like every way you go, if you can clip it off and just take all that extra available power and just reroute it into somewhere else, you need the excuses though. And then if we look at residential down here, this is where they come to us and say, don't use your air con. Turn off this, only run LED light bulbs. The amount of power that could have been used or was used is now in a pool somewhere to be redistributed. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is if they knew this crunching power demand was coming on, why would they cut down so many coal burning power plants under the guise of protecting the environment? You think that they would want more of that. I digress, and I have an answer for you. All right, so we got these numbers here where they can pull. If they destroy certain industries, certain commerce legs, and residential usage, they can get extra power to push somewhere else. So here's the air conditioning use. This is the big one. They're throwing this, summer, don't use your air conditioner. Because totally there, they say, so you got other industry, buildings, electric vehicles, space cooling. Well, don't push the electric vehicles on us then if you're concerned about the power draw. So if you're looking at how much electricity demand is going to be segmented out. And they really believe by convincing you and your building and your real estate projects and high rises and things not to use aircon or push it up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, they can scoop up that extra electricity as well. So here it is in like different colors here for you. So I'd like to put this in perspective. That interim phase between now and 2030 until they get to the 1,000 terawatt hours. Look at this. If that's 697, that fits in between that large jump from 2022 to 26. That would be enough from 26 to 30 to fill in that gap until they reach 1,000 terawatt hours. Now, I'm not sure where it's all coming from, unless we have some sort of, Preparedness magnetic motors or 0-point technologies that are not privy to the public, and they're running on this. This is what they want to substitute and cover the planet with to power this new wave of demand. Again, I want to ask you, if it's a different entity that's trying to control, does this look human to you? Because the plan is to cover the whole planet with this to produce enough power for these data centers. That's our farmland. These are destructive zones where things get blinded and burnt going in there. Birds, insects, doesn't matter. I don't think this is really a one-for-one swap on the positive side for humanity to cover our entire planet with this to divert power when there's so many other ways to do it, We can't get clean coal technologies. I mean, hell, the emissions out of gas burning power plants is just water vapor. I would encourage you to look at emissions out of gas-fired power plants and take a look at what the emissions are coming out of there. Water vapor. So I'm like, that's kind of benign. Be great. Maybe we could harvest that water vapor and use it for something else. Oh, data centers need more water. Why don't we give them that water? Oh, it might corrode their pipes. We need pure artesian well water to run the centers. They can't just use any water, dirty river water. Can't do it. Can't run any kind of detritus and kind of muddiness through the pipes. Oh, it'll corrode them. Only pure spring water / artesian water / deep well water punching into the aquifers will work. That's why I'm surprised they're not over in Africa, because they never tapped those aquifers before over there, really in an industrial sense. Nubian sandstone aquifer, all these aquifers exist under Africa. So the call is, once they get the electrification route from Eritrea, Ethiopia down through Tanzania, you're going to watch a bunch of AI data centers pop up along there, and they're going to tap all those sandstone aquifers beneath to get that water. Then they can run the desal plants as well. So when you're looking at the spearhead into a nation or country or continent that never has had reliable electricity to restart an economy, but you also need that there for Africa. They need data centers too. No data center left behind. So they're going to be pushed over there, but they need electrification. So that whole horn up there, that's why it's so contested. Whoever controls the step down of those dams controls all of this we just discussed here, all of it for Africa. The big thing is the water constraint. But the big thing is Africa's got millions, thousands, I think it was like 100,000 cubic kilometers of untapped aquifer right in that area where all the new electrification is. I noticed up in Libya, they had something like 12,000 cubic kilometers alone just under Libya. Untapped. Well, I mean, Gaddafi did tap it, and he was trying to bring up a bunch of agriculture using these primary water sources. But beyond that, it's not being industrially used, not contaminated. That's what these data centers need. They can't use regular, just like runoff water. So I do thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. I'm going to bring you another part 2 on this, on the crypto mining and how they're not able to get the equipment for everything they need, even if they could, even if they had the trillions of dollars, hundreds of billions, there's not the equipment out there. So they have to siphon it from somewhere else until they can build the equipment to run this up. We are the sacrificial lambs here. I encourage you to share with your friends and family. And please remember, Ransom Godwin and myself talk about this every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. Civilization Cycle live show. I encourage you to join us over there. And please remember our sponsor, Alpha Vedic, every purchase you make helps keep this channel on air, give you something positive for your dental health as well. So I'll see you next time. Bye for now.